Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Daniel Childs here. Hope you're doing really well wherever you are watching or listening to this. Today's going to be a news show. We're going to react to John Obi Mikel, his most recent comments about Victor Osimhen, and obviously a lot of the chatter in recent days about Chelsea striker sort of targets over the summer. I also want to react to that story from Matt Law regarding whether Chelsea are actually serious about going for experience in the summer, and I'll give you my thoughts about that. We're going to talk about goalkeepers. There was another update from Ben Jacobs today, kind of giving more insight into where most likely a new goalkeeper is going to come from, or at least how it's going to look heading into next season, and an old centre-back target re-emerging. Please like, subscribe, rate and review if you're listening to the podcast feed as well. I just want to quickly say my latest Substack piece just went out today. It's free for everyone to view, and it's about Romeo Lavia. Obviously, my last show, we spoke extensively in my Everton review about Romeo Lavia. Also, obviously, covered the rest of the game. But if you just want a piece looking at Lavia, I speak about his Chelsea career so far and kind of the pitfalls of it, of having a player who's consistently injured. So please go and check that out if you want to hear more about Romeo Lavia. Link in the description box below. It's free to subscribe, and you can also be a paid subscriber where I'll put up exclusive subscriber only posts as well. So let's talk about Victor Osimhen. There's so much about Osimhen and John Obi Mikel. It kind of feels like at times Mikel is now Osimhen's de facto kind of agent, especially trying to get this move to Chelsea finalised. How far back are we going here? I mean, it feels like pretty much since January of 24. I remember making videos about it then. So it's kind of been a long-term thing in terms of Osimhen being linked to Chelsea. And he was doing some punditry. I think it was for BN Sports before the Liverpool-Tottenham game yesterday. And he was asked about it. And this is what he had to say. He said he wants to play for Chelsea. I know where we stopped in terms of the contract. I know where we are. It's an easy fix because we've done all the hard work last summer. So we know with Victor Osimhen that it literally went up to transfer deadline day. It kind of feels weird now when you look back at it and kind of Chelsea's pursuit or non-pursuit of experienced players. But Osimhen was a serious name that clearly the club put careful consideration into. And it broke down, and eventually he ends up where he is now at Galatasaray for the season. But it's always kind of been one of those things where the moment he went there, it didn't quite feel like a full stop on him potentially joining Chelsea, because I can't believe the player himself sees that as an eventual destination or somewhere where he wants to be. The big question now heading into this summer is whether Chelsea are going to go back in for Victor Osimhen, whether there's a wage thing where Chelsea can overcome that, or will Osimhen do what others have, which has been theorised, and potential interest as well, of him just going to Saudi. I mean, to me, more and more, I think if you're a top quality player, I just don't understand why you want to go Saudi Arabia. I just don't get it. I really don't. I think the quality of football is so poor, and it's not like you can't earn good money in the Premier League. Like, it's not like, for instance, the Premier League's really struggling for money at the top level. That's obviously farcical. So for me, Osimhen, clearly, I think probably at this stage, I think John Duran will be back pretty soon, if he's got ambitions, right, as a centre-forward. The quality of football over there is just not good. It's just not good. It reminds me of where the MLS was quite a few years ago. It just feels like a place where if you're near the end of your career, one final big payday, you go out there, and N'Golo Kante, Cristiano Ronaldo, Karim Benzema, others as well, have gone out there and have got one last big payday. In terms of actually that becoming an elite place, I just can't see it personally. But maybe Osimhen and some other players see it as that, but that's just my personal view. But this kind of ties into whether Chelsea should get Victor Osimhen, whether you personally think he is the one we should be getting. I mean, some people who I do respect, I think it's Kieran Doyle, who does a lot of like analytic and kind of data work, tactical work regarding Chelsea and covering it, believes Osimhen is a good option. If you look at his numbers over the course of this season, 22 goals in 24 starts, 26 matches overall he's appeared in, just under 2,000 minutes. The difficulty you have with this is the quality of the Turkish league and how seriously you take those numbers. But what I would say is, if you're not taking those numbers seriously. I think someone like Goalkeeper, you kind of have to take the same stance with, that you're not taking it that seriously. Even Bundesliga players, when, we talk about how Bundesliga players have really struggled to adapt to Premier League football, it's kind of a similar logic. It kind of feels like hit and miss, right? You can even dismiss La Liga numbers in terms of there are examples of La Liga players coming over and not doing that well for Chelsea and for other clubs. It's not an exact science, is it? Let's be honest. Like Villarreal, Nicholas Jackson doesn't score a lot. There's barely any evidence on him. And his first season for Chelsea is actually pretty good. He's already hit 10 goals this season. So it's not a cut and dry thing of this guy comes from this league, which means he's going to be a success. And because this league actually isn't that good, it means he's actually not that good of a player. I think sometimes it's not as simple as some people want to chalk it up to be, just in my personal opinion. However, it also links into whether Chelsea are going to look for an older profile player in key positions this summer. Matt Law was once again on the London is Blue pod. If you haven't listened to it, I suspect many people who listen to my podcast probably are in the same circles. They'll listen to what Matt Law has to say, or they'll listen to the London is Blue pod and other Chelsea podcasts, I suspect. But if you haven't, I would suggest go back and listen to it because it still is pretty evergreen. Like, they speak about a lot of things that are not completely rubbish by what happened against Everton at the weekend. And he was speaking about Chelsea signings, and particularly regarding centre-forward, and there are experienced players out there. The thing that surprised me, he spoke about Harry Kane. Harry Kane, apparently it's like an open secret in football that Harry Kane has some form of a release clause in his Bayern Munich contract. Now, it's been said since that will Bayern offer him that new contract after this season? Maybe they will, but maybe there is that a law or kind of incentive or kind of expectation that Harry Kane will want to return to England at some point, right? He's going to win that Bundesliga. He's gone out there. He's competed seriously. He's finally going to get that trophy that he's wanted for so long. Will that then be enough for him in Germany, or will he want to stay there, win more trophies, and maybe, go all the way in the Champions League? Hard to tell, but at least that's part of it. Also, you've got to take what Matt Law seriously says about Ollie Watkins. He's an Aston Villa fan, but he's obviously well connected there. Ollie Watkins, apparently 40-45 million might get him out of Aston Villa, and there's rumours about him maybe leaving Aston Villa this summer. He's another name, and obviously Victor Osimhen as well. And he was basically saying, if you're going to be serious, you go out, you put money down, and you actually be serious. And then very quickly, Matt Law put a report out himself, rubbishing all of it. Also rubbishing Kevin De Bruyne, another player who could be on the move this summer and join another Premier League club. And some people will kind of get excited about the prospect of Chelsea going out and signing seriously. And the Virgil van Dijk story that we spoke about last week, that I know many of you in the comments kind of rubbished, right? I take what David Ornstein says seriously, right? I do think there was probably at least interest in Virgil van Dijk. However, and it's a big however, as I've stated before, that does not mean they got into a room with Virgil van Dijk and started negotiating, which for me is where, just my skepticism, and I was like, well, I can't really take it that seriously because it never got to that stage. It's quite easy to sit back and say you have interest in someone, but if you actually don't get into the negotiating position of where this could be a realistic thing and you have to start talking money, I don't take it that seriously. But for me, what this did was very quickly just made it abundantly clear to me, and it should to all of you, that it's all bluster, it's all bluffing. Like, it's not actually serious. Until Chelsea walk into a room and get a Victor Osimhen, a Harry Kane and Ollie Watkins over the line, a serious player, someone who's either producing an elite level, who has done in the past, who you really think like is a statement signing, you shouldn't take any of it seriously, because a lot of it is maybe smoke and mirrors, is maybe, a bit of PR, maybe not actually that accurate reporting. And that's kind of where I stand with Victor Osimhen. Mikel's doing his best, but I still kind of, my instincts has been all year, it's going to be like a Liam Delap. And that's not me saying that Liam Delap is crap and he's not a good player and he's not someone that could benefit from joining Chelsea. I've said here before, I've written about it on my Substack, I think Liam Delap would be a good signing for like a 30 million release clause for the production rate that guy has had for a team that have been destined to be relegated for most of the season. I think that's a good player. But in terms of if you're looking for that big superstar name, I'm still very, very skeptical Chelsea are even going to go close to any of these names personally. Until I see it, I don't believe it. And I think you should probably have the same healthy skepticism. And it's not just being negative for being negative's sake, as I consistently retort when people accuse me and others of that. It's evidence in front of you of what Chelsea actually do. I care so much more about what Chelsea actually do rather than what they say they might do or theory of what they could do. And I think that's reality. So maybe you're skeptical about Osimhen. Maybe you don't think he's the solution. Maybe you have some concerns about him. Maybe you think he doesn't suit our style of play, whatever it is. Or maybe you think there's another striker out there like a Goalkeeper. Sesko's been linked as well once again. I mean, I think Arsenal definitely are in the race as well. And it's whether they get Goalkeeper. I know they've been linked to Sesko for a long period of time. So if, let's say that Sesko goes to Arsenal, right? That opens up the door. But then I suspect that Man United will be out there for a centre-forward. There'll be other teams in Europe out there for a centre-forward. And there's no guarantee that Chelsea are going to wrap up Liam Delap as well, which you think is kind of cut and dry. You think that's a deal they should get over the line. But yeah, it's going to be a messy situation. But I just want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And that whole experience thing is just, it'd be nice, but I'm not seeing anything at the moment that's giving me hope that's actually going to happen this summer. The other thing to speak about here is Ben Jacobs, another guy I think you should take seriously when he is talking about Chelsea because he has a lot of good connections with the club, is the whole goalkeeping situation. There's been links to Borussia Dortmund's Grigor Kobel, but apparently those reports are wide of the mark, the links, that is. He understands there's no outreach to other keepers to date, and the aim of Chelsea is to still pick a new number one from Robert Sanchez, Filip Jorgensen, Georgia Petrovic, and Mike Penders. So effectively what you've got here is an internal review. Nowadays, it feels like most have kind of two senior goalkeepers, and then you either have a Bettinelli or you have a Lucas Bergstrom or you have a younger goalkeeper that kind of remains in the first team squad, but doesn't ever play, is kind of the way it feels like it's going to be for Chelsea. I think out of those options, Georgia Petrovic and Mike Penders is probably the duo that most people would probably like to see. But Matt Laura said in the past that, and quite recently, that it's unlikely Filip Jorgensen gets sold this summer. I mean, to me, I know he's had a few good weeks, but I still think Robert Sanchez should be off in the summer. I just really should. I think I've seen far too much of Robert Sanchez at Chelsea, and I don't think that's going to change. I don't think his average level at this point is going to change. He will have some good weeks, but overall, I think he's a flawed player. You shouldn't have him as your number one at the very least. And again, the idea of, are Chelsea going to go out there and sign seriously? You're being told no. Like, maybe something radically changes. Maybe a Mike Maignan comes into the conversation. Maybe Chelsea do something really wild. I know Diego Costa has been linked with Man City, I think it was, in recent weeks. But again, you're kind of being told there's not going to be radical transformation in this. So Georgia Petrovic, I want to see a return. Mike Penders, they're obviously putting a lot into. Is that enough? Is that good enough? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. The final thing I just want to speak about here is I saw Simon Phillips link into this. TBR Football reporting that Chelsea still in regular contact with, remember this name, kids from the old days of 2022, Jules Koundé. Apparently still in contact with the reps of Koundé, who's obviously at Barcelona. Now, we tried to sign him multiple summers. In the summer of 21 and the summer of 22, when it got really close, and then he obviously joined Barcelona. That was the first summer of this ownership. But since then, Koundé still linked with Chelsea most windows, and apparently Barca are once again in a situation this summer where they're going to need to sell in order to sign their desired target. So there could be a chance that they listen to offers for some of their bigger stars. I'd be surprised if Koundé is allowed to leave, though. That's from Cy Phillips. It just makes me laugh, right? And maybe there is an alternative universe. I was actually quite high on signing Jules Koundé in the summer of 21 and 22, especially the summer of 22. And given the injury problems that Fofana has had since we signed him, because he basically turned out to be the alternative, if you remember, that fell through. I think if we signed Koundé, we probably wouldn't have signed Fofana as well, as kind of that right-sided centre-back when Tuchel was still here. And you kind of look at the durability of Jules Koundé. I know people have their doubts about Jules Koundé in terms of like height, physicality. He stayed in La Liga because he was obviously at Sevilla and then he moved to Barcelona. So we haven't seen what he would do in the Premier League. And that was a big concern of people for him. But I thought his speed, his actual ability, despite his height, to be an aggressive centre-back, I thought was a real exciting trait of his that could be developed. And the ability to be a little bit versatile. He could play as a right-back, right centre-back. But obviously last week we spoke about centre-backs, right? Dean Huijsen's being linked. Brandt Veet, who played against us for Everton. Mark Guehi still being linked to Chelsea, who I'm a fan of. But I still maintain, and I tweeted this out earlier, X'd out, whatever you call it nowadays. Mark Guehi, I'm a fan of, right? And I have been even since he left Chelsea. I don't think Dean Huijsen is a bad player. I'm not sitting here and telling you he'd be a rubbish signing. And there aren't other names out there. If Chelsea could sign what would be, for me, be deemed a far more experienced, dominant centre-back, I think that'd be great. But to me, Trev Chalobah remains Chelsea's best centre-back, best performing centre-back. I spoke about this in my Everton review. I feel like I'm here every single 12 months now talking about how great Trevor Chalobah is and why it seems no matter what we do, how much we spend, we always end up reverting back to Trev Chalobah being our best centre-back. So maybe will the penny finally drop on Chelsea that actually it's worth keeping this guy around as at the very least an insurance policy? I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, again, centre-back targets, I think you have to be looking at kind of 25 and under for the type of profile they're going to look at. I think the bonus of looking at Dean Huijsen, Branthwaite and Guehi, all Premier League players who are playing in the current league. Again, you'd like to think there's a smoother transition in terms of just like physicality of understanding the league, understanding what's required as a centre-back, and hopefully that transition can be quite quick because this summer, as I'll get back to with any signing, it's a wild summer. Whatever happens with the head coach, it's going to be a mad summer turnaround in terms of, I was just looking at the dates earlier today, like planning my content for next season. Going from this season ending and potentially us getting to the Europa Conference League final, which is late May, season ends there. A couple weeks later, like 2 weeks later, you go straight into the Club World Cup in America. After that, mid-July to late July, it's probably going to be a condensed pre-season, which is understandable, but probably not great because you like to have a decent pre-season. I'm a big believer that pre-season is important. And then you're right back into the Premier League. So in some ways, your transfer strategy might and probably should be dictated by an understanding that you probably need impact players, probably more so than potential. But we know from Chelsea's transfer strategy that isn't always a priority in terms of like football logic behind why we're signing players. But I just think maybe it's one of those things that you have to kind of factor in for, and I'd hope that Chelsea's decision makers are factoring in. Whether they are or not, I don't know. But my hope would be understanding that because of that short turnaround, you need players who are going to come in and you're pretty comfortable and pretty confident they can do a good job. Because if it's cluttered, if it's a mess like last summer, I think it's going to create even more confusion in the current dressing room and also just in terms of trying to get Chelsea into a better place by this time next year. So those are my thoughts, feelings, reacting to the latest news. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Check out my Substack, links down below as well. Follow me across the socials at SonOfChelsea, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.